I have had one or two suggestions to do videos on every Champions League and European Cup winning side and look at where they are now. The nature of that competition though, the very pinnacle of the European game, means that the vast majority of European champions are very well known clubs. I don't think most people are too interested to hear about where Real Madrid, Bayern Munich and Manchester United are now. You don't really need me to tell you that. Instead, I'm going to look at the 7 worst former European Cup and Champions League winners in 2019. When I say worst, that isn't my opinion, it is based on each club's UEFA coefficient over the last 10 years, so there's some science to it. If a team hasn't played any European football at all over the last 10 years, and there are only 2 European champions who fall into that category, they'll be ranked based on where they finished last season. Here are the 7 worst European champions in 2019. Celtic. The 7th worst former European champions in 2019 according to UEFA's 10-year coefficients, Celtic rank 49th among European clubs over the last decade, just below the likes of FC Copenhagen, Club Brugge and Genk. Celtic became the first British club to win the European Cup in 1967 when their Lisbon Lions defeated Helenio Herrera's more fancied Inter Milan side. The Glasgow Giants have only reached the knockout stage of the Champions League once in the last decade though, and they failed to qualify this season. Steaua Bucharest. Next up in this 7, just 5 places below Celtic in UEFA's 10-year coefficients, we have Steaua Bucharest. By far the most successful club in Romania, Steaua haven't won a league title since 2015, which is actually a fairly long barren spell by their standards. Steaua won the 1986 European Cup final against Barcelona on penalties with an all-Romanian 11, as goalkeeper Helmut Ducadam saved every one of Barcelona's 4 penalties. The club has had a pretty torrid time of things in the Champions League in recent years though, only making the group stages once and failing to win any of their 6 matches as they propped up Group E. Feyenoord. A little like Celtic, it seems bizarre to be talking about Feyenoord as anything other than a richly competitive side in European competition. Sadly, for some time now, that just hasn't been the case. Whilst their great rivals Ajax are still up in 23rd, Feyenoord rank 82nd in UEFA's 10-year coefficients, since they too have only made the group stages once in the last 10 years, losing 5 of their 6 games when they got there. Feyenoord won the European Cup in 1970 when Austrian Ernst Happel guided them to a 2-1 win over Celtic. Red Star Belgrade. Red Star Belgrade's European triumph was relatively recent by the standards of this 7, having overcome Marseille on penalties in the 1991 final to record a famous victory for Serbian football. Now, some of you may recall that Red Star actually beat eventual winners Liverpool in the group stages of last season's Champions League, but that was the only game they won, finishing bottom of their group, in what was the only time they featured in the tournament's group stages since 1992. That gives Red Star a UEFA coefficient ranking of 103rd over the last 10 years, trailing the likes of Stoke City, Swansea City and Birmingham City. Aston Villa. The 8th most successful club in English football and one of only 5 English clubs to have been crowned European champions, Aston Villa won the European Cup in 1982 with a 1-0 win over Bayern Munich. The Birmingham-based outfit haven't been English or European champions since then and then reached the group stages of either the Champions League or the Europa League in the last decade. They did feature in the playoffs twice under Martin O'Neill for the Europa League, losing to Rapid Vienna on both occasions. Things went from bad to worse for Villa in 2016 when they were relegated from the Premier League, but they returned to the top flight this season. Hamburg. There are 2 clubs in this 7 that haven't played any European football since the start of the 2010-11 season, meaning they don't rank in UEFA's 10-year coefficients at all. Naturally, those 2 teams come out as the top 2 in this 7, starting with German side Hamburg. Hamburg won the European Cup in 1983, just a season after Villa's triumph in 1982, beating Juventus 1-0 in the final. Up until 2018, Hamburg had never played outside of the top flight of German football, and they finished 4th in the 2nd tier last season. Hamburg last played European football in the 2009-10 campaign, reaching the semi-finals of the Europa League, and they last played in the Champions League in 2006-07. Nottingham Forest. One of only 8 teams to have retained the European Cup, Nottingham Forest won back-to-back European titles under Brian Clough in 1979 and 1980. Forest were never a force in European football before Clough, nor have they been since. They last played European football in the 1995-96 campaign, in which they reached the quarter-finals of the UEFA Cup, and they haven't even played top-flight domestic football since 1999. As such, Forest are nowhere to be seen in UEFA's 10-year coefficients, and having finished 9th in the Championship last season, they have to come out on top in this 7. That's it for today's video. Thank you for watching. Feel free to give the video a like if you enjoyed it, in fact please do, and make sure you're subscribed to HITC Sevens, and head over to www.englandsgreatestdefender.com to have your mind blown by the best football book ever written.